This next story actually involves someone who miraculously actually has been released. He actually is out. He's out of Guantanamo Bay, but where he is now is actually, in some ways, it's actually gotten worse for him because he's actually been rearrested. So why don't you tell us the whole story here, because it's really pretty frightening.
Yes, and his lawyer calls this his Groundhog Day from hell.
Mm-hmm.
So he's a Moroccan who was, again, 13 years in Guantanamo. He actually, I don't know how it was ever okay to keep him in Guantanamo this long. One of the things he's been participating in was like charity work, and he ended up being caught up in the war in Afghanistan, and at some point was sold off to detaining authorities, to U.S. military personnel, and then ended up at Guantanamo. I believe that's how he ended up in this this maelstrom of just incredible depravity. So he did get to leave Guantanamo, which you would think would be a good thing, and that happened like a week ago. And so he's now in Morocco, and the authorities decided to detain him and are looking at prosecuting him on allegations similar to the ones that the U.S. government wanted to bring, but those collapsed in court when he was challenging the conditions of his confinement through what is known as a habeas petition in court. So going to the court and asking them to review whether or not it was justified for the government to keep him at Guantanamo. And there's a bunch of information or records from that are being kept secret. His lawyers from Reprieve are trying to get those public so he can use that information to show the Moroccan authorities that there's absolutely nothing to any of these allegations of my involvement in terrorism or whatever groups you think I participated in that are against Morocco's interests. So you should release me. But he was terrorized on his way out of Guantanamo. They put him on a flight. He was sent away in the same manner that he was brought. They blindfolded him. They put on, I believe they put on earmuffs to remove his ability to hear anything. So there's sensory deprivation, and he's got his body in shackles, restrained on his seat for the flight to Morocco.
And again, this is someone who was cleared of any wrongdoing. They let him go. Actually, he one of the few that they actually have let go. And so now he gets released to Morocco, and he gets detained in Morocco, and the United States is actually, I know his lawyers are asking for evidence, and the U.S. is withholding the evidence and not actually. What's the United States excuse for not giving any of the actual documents involving him?
At this point, it's like a bureaucratic, clerical error that they would probably blame it on for the fact that none of this information is released.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, I think it's very deliberate that they don't have all these documents released, because for over 1,400 days, the lawyers have had this request for all these different documents from the case to show that Chekkouri is completely innocent of any allegations against him. And so his lawyers are of the mind that it's more likely that this information will be released when the seas have risen and we're all drowning from climate change. And
that might be kind of soon, though. I mean, to be fair, that could be happening sooner than we think.
Yeah, true. But then Chekkouri would be dead,
right?
Long dead inside of his cell in Morocco. I mean, look, this is really terrible on a larger scale, because Morocco is a country that has been part of the CIA's secret rendition and detention program. It's a place where we know there have been people brought through there and in notorious prisons. They have been subject to torture. The prison where he is now is a site where some pretty horrific things have happened to people. And so we know that, for example, I don't want to totally gross your viewers out, but there is someone who was a British prisoner named Binyam Mohammed who had, at one point, was imprisoned in a Moroccan jail, and there they used a razor to cut up his genitals. So, we know that there is something really terribly heinous about the way that the U.S. cooperates with Morocco and has in the war on terrorism. And it seems like this is just a continuation. For example, if you couldn't do anything with him here in the United States, someone in government decided to pass him on to Morocco and just handle him there. And that seems to me to be an extension of the gross injustice of Guantanamo.
How many of the, I don't know if you have the number in front of you here, but a rough estimate, how many people are still left in GITMO? How many are still slated for release? I think you were telling me, I think there's one British prisoner who actually is slated for release pretty soon. Where do we stand now with people who are still there?
Yeah, so there's a well-known prisoner named Shakir Amr who Amnesty International has campaigned for. There's been quite a campaign for him. He's the last British resident of Guantanamo. And again, absolutely nothing. He ever did anything to the United States. There's no basis for him to have been in Guantanamo. The reason why he has continued to be detained is possibly because he was such a leader in hunger strikes. He resisted his confinement and was a rabble-rouser inside of the prison. But again, I don't understand why that would justify keeping him there. In fact, if I was a jailer, I would want to get him out of the prison so that he would stop making my life hell as a warden. Right. But whatever. We've got 114 captives still in Guantanamo. I like using that word. That's the way that Miami Herald's Carol Rosenberg talks about them, or that's how they use them. And so those people remain, and there's about, I want to say there's somewhere around 50 that are still, that are cleared for release. And then you have this other category that you can call forever prisoners. Mm-hmm. And those are people who are slated for indefinite detention. And they haven't been charged with any crimes, but for whatever reason, the Obama administration has decided, or our U.S. security agencies have decided, that there is no reason that we could let them go back to their countries because they might rejoin the fight and continue to engage in warfare against us or terrorism. And it possibly so. I mean, they've been unjustly detained for 12 years. It would be pretty aggravating and change your life and radicalize you, and you might want to fight the enemy that kept you in jail for 12 years. So that doesn't make no sense, but it doesn't justify keeping them imprisoned. And now the last point to make is that we're talking about bringing these men to U.S. soil and putting them in prisons here in the United States so that Guantanamo can be shut down. But remember, Guantanamo was always about keeping people in prison, out of sight, out of mind, and not having to deal with the issue of the abuse and torture that they were going to undergo, the way that interrogations were going to be carried out, as this battle laboratory was set up to experiment with interrogation techniques against people and challenge the way that we collected intelligence for the war on terrorism. But now we're going to move these people to prisons, supermax prisons here in the United States, and again, they're going to be out of sight, out of mind, and they're going to try to get rid of this issue that we have this class of men here in the United States now or in the future that are going to continue to be subject to this sort of injustice.